Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Working Identity, Updated Edition, with a new preface, Unconventional Strategies for Reinventing Your Career, by Herminia Ibarra, narrated by Joana Garcia. Then indecision brings its own delays, and days are lost, lamenting over lost days. Are you in earnest? Seize this very minute. What you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Preface. Am I doing the right work for me? And should I change direction? Is one of the most pressing questions on people's minds today. For an increasing number of people, it's not even a question anymore. They know they're stuck in the wrong career, or they're up against the wall of a forced transition. Most can articulate clearly what they don't want or what no longer works for them. What's less clear is what to do instead, and how to make the change. Across the world, the numbers of people taking the leap to something different have risen significantly since this book was first published. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic made people everywhere rethink their work lives and continue to grow. But no matter how common career change has become, no one has figured out how to avoid the turmoil, the tumult of straying from the linear path. Most people experience the transition to a new working life as a time of confusion, loss, insecurity, and struggle. And this uncertain period usually lasts much longer than anyone imagines at the outset. An Ivy League network doesn't help. Even ample financial reserves and great family support do not make the emotions any easier to bear. Much more than transferring to a similar job in a new company or industry, or moving laterally into a different work function within a field we already know well, a true change of direction is almost always terrifying, even as it is exhilarating. So if your ears perk up when you hear about the mid-career lawyer who gave it all up to become a documentary filmmaker, the 30-something auditor who ditched her accounting firm to start her own toy company, or the retiring banker who found a new sense of purpose as an entrepreneur, this book is for you. If you wonder how they did it, are curious about what is typical and what is rare among the cases you have seen, the person who yearns for change but remains stuck, or the person who manages to pivot to something completely different, you will also listen to these chapters with interest. Finding a method to the madness won't make the ordeal effortless, but it can increase your chances of a successful reinvention, and in doing so, of finding greater joy and fulfillment in your working life. For even when career change looks like a random process, governed by factors outside our control, a life crisis that forces us to reprioritize, a job offer that lands in our lap when least expected, common and knowable patterns are at work. No career change materializes out of the blue. There is a comprehensible process. It's just not the one you were taught. Changing careers, changing selves. At the heart of this book are the stories of dozens of people who changed careers. It analyzes their experiences through the lens of established psychological and behavioral theories. Based on the stories and extensive research in the social sciences, the book affirms the uncertainties of the career transition process and identifies its underlying principles. But it does not offer a 10-point plan for better transitioning, because that is not the nature of the process. Instead, it lays out a straightforward framework that describes what is really involved and some tried and proven unconventional strategies that will make the difference between staying stuck and moving on. The book hinges on two disarmingly simple ideas. First, our working identity is not a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered at the very core of our inner being. Rather, it is made up of many possibilities, some tangible and concrete, defined by the things we do, the company we keep, and the stories we tell about our work and lives. Others existing only in the realm of future potential and private dreams. Second, changing careers means changing ourselves, reworking our identities. Since we are many selves, changing is not about swapping one identity for another, but rather a transition process in which we reconfigure the full set of possibilities. These simple ideas alter everything we take for granted about finding a new career. They ask us to devote the greater part of our time and energy to action rather than reflection, to doing instead of planning. Hence, the unconventional strategies. Conventional wisdom tells us that the key to making a successful change lies in first knowing, with as much clarity and certainty as possible, what we really want to do, and then using that knowledge to implement a sound strategy. Knowing in theory comes from self-reflection in solitary introspection, or with the help of standardized questionnaires and certified professionals. Once we have understood our temperament, needs, competencies, life purpose, and core values, we can go out and find a job or organization that matches. Next, come the familiar goal setting, box checking, and list making exercises, the tried and true techniques for landing a job under normal circumstances. Planning is essential. The conventional approach cautions us against making a move before we are fully prepared, before we know exactly where we are going. But career change doesn't follow the conventional method, and it's not linear. We learn who we are, in practice, not in theory, by testing reality, not by looking inside. We discover the true possibilities by doing. Trying out new activities, reaching out to new groups, finding new role models, and reworking our story as we tell it to those around us. What we want clarifies with experience and validation from others along the way. We interpret and incorporate the new information, adding colors and contours, tinting and shading and shaping, as our choices help us create the portrait of who we are becoming. To launch ourselves anew, we need to get out of our heads. We need flesh and blood examples, concrete experiments. We need to act. The Career Change Challenge. When I first wrote Working Identity, I naively thought its lessons mainly applied to mid-career professionals who questioned their career path after having made a long-term investment of time, energy, and education in that path. In one of the dumbest statements I have ever published, I said the book was not for people just starting their working life or for those nearing retirement age and exploring less than full-time work activities. I could not have been more wrong. Today, people of all ages are asking themselves profound questions about what work they do, how much work they do, if at all, and the place of work, physically and psychologically, in their lives. Fewer and fewer of us are following the old three-stage life defined by a short education period when we are young, a long, continuous work period as an adult, and a conventional retirement as we get older. As my London Business School colleagues Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott argue in their book, The 100-Year Life, when humanity has won a 20 to 30-year longevity premium, it makes no sense just to add the equivalent number of working years, much less do the same job. Instead, the more logical thing to do is to make more transitions between jobs, careers, and periods of rest, restoration, or education, as we are seeing already. No matter your age, in looking to make a career move, you will typically find yourself in one of three periods and pathways, each dominated by a defining question. Build. How do I find a work arena in which to build skills, identity, and reputation? Pivot. How do I shift into a different work arena when the old one is no longer suitable or possible? Leverage. How do I curate work that I enjoy and plays to my strengths without having to devote all my time and energy to work? Ages and stages of life might be part of the story, but they are not the whole story. True, building is typically an earlier career concern, whereas pivoting is what many seek midway through their careers, and leverage often drives later career changes, in which a central goal is to alter the place of work in one's life. Yet, there are many variations on this pattern. For example, many young people today are making choices that allow ample room for their pursuits outside of work, opting for leverage and portfolio careers rather than building a singular path. Likewise, many older adults retire from a lifelong career to pivot into something completely different, often creative work, but sometimes a full-on big role. Over the course of our expanding lifespan, we are more apt to cycle back and forth through building, pivoting, and leveraging periods than to move through them in stages. So whatever your age or career stage, if you have a desire to make the next chapter of your working life a psychological success, this book is for you. Knowing what twists might lie in the road ahead and what steps promote renewal won't reduce the great uncertainty about the ultimate destination, but it will increase your chances of starting on a good path. As Goethe urges us in the opening quote, "Don't delay. What you can do, or dream you can, begin it." What's changed? In the research for this book, I discovered common patterns at the heart of even the most desperate of career changes, and a corresponding set of identifiable, if unconventional, strategies behind what can look like chance occurrences and disorderly behavior. In the years since it was first published, I have taught thousands of students the working identity strategies, spoken to countless audiences about its lessons, and worked with all kinds of organizations, university career services and professional coaching groups, for example, that help people through work transitions and found validation for the process I describe here, time and again. The book has been translated into 10 languages. Its ideas have been featured in popular books like David Epstein's Range and have provided the foundation for master's and PhD theses across the world. To this day, I still receive much appreciated emails from readers telling me how my book helped them on their journey. That's not to say that the career landscape hasn't changed. For starters, when I wrote Working Identity, the notion of experimenting iteratively with one's possible selves was unusual. Today, ideas like fast prototyping and design thinking are everywhere. Yet, we hesitate to apply them to our working identities, if only because our desire for answers allows the Discover the True You industry to thrive. 4 trends, already visible when Working Identity was first published, combine to explain the rising frequency of career change. Changes in longevity, technology, jobs, and corporate practices, and social expectations. We're living longer. That means mid-career and retirement are not what they used to be. More people are making career pivots in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and more people are embracing new forms of work beyond traditional retirement age. Technology is continuously transforming what kind of work we do and how we do it. Most recently, as the work from anywhere and artificial intelligence revolutions advance, it has opened up choices, but also made our jobs less secure and more demanding of our time and energy. Responding to constant disruption, global competition, and pressure from financial markets, companies have organized to be as focused and streamlined as possible, with as few assets and employees as is feasible. No one is untouched by layoffs these days. At the same time, what we want and expect from a job has evolved. Once our basic needs are met, people of all ages want more than just a paycheck. Passion, purpose, self-expression, meaning, and life balance are top of list, not nice-to-haves that can be deferred for later. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, if ever there was an event that caused worldwide existential "what's important to me, what makes me happy" questioning, this was it. I conducted a public online session for people in the throes of asking themselves questions about what's next. I called the session "How to Change Careers in Your 30s, 40s, and 50s Plus." Most of the 500-plus people who joined the webinar were indeed contemplating a career change. What were they looking to get out of it? As you might expect, there were some differences by age. The younger participants wanted better pay and career prospects, and the older participants wanted to make better use of their skills and to have more freedom to enjoy other aspects of their lives. But there was one common denominator across the ages. Everyone wanted a greater sense of meaning in their work. We all want to do work that matters. Yet, as I have learned over the years, we're mostly on our own when it comes to how to find it. Through the ages, the important transitions in our lives have had a script. You know how long it will take or when the passage happens, such as the length of a master's program, pursuing an MBA in your late 20s, or retiring at 65. The key steps to get from A to D are spelled out, such as how to become a surgeon, how to make partner. Peers are in lockstep with you. Elders who have gone before you show the way, and institutions such as schools attract recruiters and ratify passage. That all starts to break down in our 30s. By the time we're making career changes in our 40s and beyond, there are few organized job markets. We're rarely moving in sync with a defined peer group, often at a loss for role models and certainly with no clue about how long it will take. In academic jargon, we call this an under-institutionalized transition. There are no rules. As we'll learn, the absence of well-trod pathways can make the process psychologically harder, but its promise, the possibilities of true self-authoring, is so much greater. Complicating matters, so many of our workplaces are also in transition, betwixt and between old ways of operating and an as yet undefined next normal. The disruption wrought by the pandemic created a liminal space for many people, interrupting our habitual routines and catalyzing real change in where, how, and why we work. People are leaving, quitting, searching and looking for meaningful change like never before, all while working and networking in hybrid workplaces. We still don't know what the future holds, but we know there is no going back. That's why this book is more relevant today than when it was first published. We, and many people we know and love are at a crossroads. This book gives you a new set of tools for navigating this confusing, uncertain time in your life, and for doing it over and over with each new transition you may face. It won't be easy, but there are predictable phases and tried-and-true steps that will help you navigate the inevitable changes with more hope, optimism, and agency. What's changed in this edition? Deciding what to change and what to keep in revising this book was a challenge. The most notable change readers of the first edition discover is that at the end of each chapter, I have added a summary and exercises that I have developed over the years to help people take action to work their identities. I also brought the unconventional strategies forward, from the concluding chapter to the introduction. My aim was to make the book even more actionable. I also added some new short sections to include relevant material that came out after the book was first published, alongside some more recent examples of the career changers I have come across since. At the same time, in response to helpful reader feedback, I did my best to simplify some of the more academic language. I hope returning readers and new listeners will find this second edition a good companion. Chapter 1. Reinventing Yourself. We like to think that the key to a successful career change is knowing what we want to do next, and then using that knowledge to guide our actions. But change usually happens the other way around. Doing comes first, knowing second. Why? Because changing careers means redefining our working identity, how we see ourselves in our professional roles, what we convey about ourselves to others, and ultimately, how we live our working lives. Career transitions follow a first act and then think sequence, because who we are and what we do are so tightly connected. The tight connection is the result of years of action. To change it, we must resort to the same methods. Most of the time, our working identity changes so gradually and naturally that we don't even notice how much we have changed. But sometimes we hit a period when the desire for change imposes itself with great urgency. What do? We try to think out our dilemma. We try to swap our old, outdated roles for new, more alluring selves in one fell swoop. And we get stuck. Why? Because as adults, we're much more likely to act our way into a new way of thinking than to think our way into a new way of acting. We rethink ourselves in the same way, by gradually exposing ourselves to new worlds, relationships, and roles. This book is a study of how people from all walks of professional life change careers, closely examining what they really did, neither how they were supposed to do it, nor how it appeared with hindsight, reveals two essential points that go against conventional wisdom. First, we are not one self, but many selves. Consequently, we cannot simply trade in the old for a new working identity or upgrade to version 2.0. To reinvent ourselves, we must live through a period of transition in which we rethink and reconfigure a multitude of possibilities. Second, it is nearly impossible to think out how to reinvent ourselves, and therefore it is equally hard to execute in a planned and orderly way. A successful outcome hinges less on knowing one's inner, true self at the start than on starting a multi-step process of envisioning and testing possible futures. No amount of self-reflection can substitute for the direct experience we need to evaluate alternatives according to criteria that change as we do. These two essential points are the foundation for a set of unconventional strategies that transform what appears to be a mysterious road to Damascus transition process into a learning by doing practice that any of us can adopt. We start this process by taking action, as the two following stories illustrate. Lucy, tech manager, becomes independent coach. Lucy Hartman, an information technology expert, had long thought she wanted a high-powered career as an executive, even better to be part of a high-tech startup that awarded its executives lots of stock options. A chance encounter with a consultant hired to help her company gave her a glimpse of a possible new future. When she dropped out of college at 20, Lucy had no idea what she wanted to do. She landed in technology by accident and had the good fortune to work for a manager who encouraged her to take coding courses. I just love the problem solving and the precision that work required. I liked the sense of accomplishment I got from writing a program. Several years into it, though, I remember thinking to myself, I hope I'm not doing this 10 years from now. The glow had worn off, but I had no idea what to do otherwise, and the technology area offered such great prospects that it felt daunting to even consider a career in which I would have to start all over again. I went to a specialist in career renewal who gave me some assessment tests. She advised me to leverage what I was already doing into something new and different, so that I wouldn't have to start from scratch again. But nothing really came out of that. Then I went to work at a brokerage firm where I had what I would describe as my career highs and lows. I implemented an extremely high-profile operating system change that got me promoted to vice president. Technologically, I was the expert, but managerially, I was in way over my head. The people issues were beyond my understanding, let alone my having the skills to manage through them. So we hired an organizational development consultant to advise us on how to build a solid management team and culture. I liked her so much that I hired her to coach me personally. The feedback she collected on me scared the living daylights out of me. I had imagined myself on a managerial career path, and I thought my people skills were among my core strengths. But she showed that they were not strong at all, and that my coworkers perceived me as controlling. She worked with me for about 7 or 8 months, and the results were completely transformational. She engaged me with myself, arguing that I'd lost touch with who I was and what I wanted in my life. She thought I needed to figure that out rather than worry about how to climb the corporate ladder, which had been my obsession. When I examined what I really wanted my life to be about, I concluded it was about connecting with people. Yet all my energy was going counter to that desire. I had this idea in my head that an executive works 70 or more hours a week and doesn't really have time for anybody because there is all this stuff to do. I concluded that was basically a crock. In fact, I started to realize that I might be happier and more successful if I invested more time in my colleagues at work and in my relationships outside work. My focus started to shift from tasks to relationships. My effectiveness improved as a result, but I also realized that I couldn't overcome some of the real barriers to change at my firm. I decided it was time for me to leave to pursue a career in a smaller company where I could apply everything I had learned in the coaching. I went to work at Forum One, a startup, as a member of the executive team. By this time, it was clear that I wanted to move on to something different.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?